Welcome everyone to Wrasslin Raw!
All right, you're listening to Wrasslin Raw, the podcast that takes you back to when Monday Night Raw was uncut, uncooked, and uncensored. Thank you for joining us. You're here with Ryan Arico.
Hey there.
Joe Gimateo.
Thank you, Jason. The questions were flooding in this week, and the answer is yes, everyone. I am the illegitimate son of WWF Magazine writer Louis Gianfrido.
Oh, my God. I'm Jason Bartlett. That's no relation to Rob Bartlett, and we are going to examine WWE history one episode of Raw at a time. So yeah, guys, this episode of Raw that we're going to get into is the blow-off Raw for this big Duke the Dumpster Droese versus Jerry the King Lawler match. And as far as last time on Wrasslin Raw goes, that was pretty much it. They kept on hammering that into us. I was looking forward to this match so much because I feel like I'd been brainwashed into looking forward to it. Joe, are you excited to see Duke the Dumpster take on Jerry the King Lawler finally at last?
I am not at all. This particular Raw episode is the wrestling action is not very good.
No,
but there's some other stuff that's good.
Not a whole lot of in-ring action that's worthy of note here, and I'm sure that's going to come out here in our discussions that we have. But either way, let's get into it. So, in this episode of Wrasslin Raw, we're going to be talking about the Raw that aired on September 19th, 1994. And this Raw was recorded at the Lowell Memorial Auditorium in Lowell, Massachusetts, and features Vince McMahon and the Macho Man Randy Savage on commentary. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
All right, let's get into it. For the show intro, we go straight into it with highlights from Coliseum Home Video, reviewing the single greatest heel turn in the history of professional wrestling, Tatanka betraying Lex Luger at SummerSlam to join the $1 Million Corporation. We get clips from this past weekend's Superstars with Tatanka wearing a nice suit, getting out of a limo with the $1 Million Man. They both appear on a Heartbreak Hotel segment, saying that unlike Lex Luger, Tatanka appreciates the value of $1 million.
Don't forget the cheap maniacal laugh from
the laugh.
He really tried to do a Ted DiBiase there, and it really fell flat.
It's not too often I have a laugh out loud moment when watching these, but that was one of them.
I had a couple laugh out loud moments in this episode of Raw. I'm looking forward to discussing them with you.
Yes, so did I. One of them right towards the beginning. Right when Tatanka was getting out of the limousine, that shot from Superstars, and you have Vince talk about how Tatanka is a man who used to represent Native Americans proudly at one time, but now he's abandoned his traditional clothing and philosophy.
Yes. The clothing came first. It didn't matter about the philosophy.
Yes.
But damn it, he's not wearing that headdress anymore. So after this montage of videos, we're going to cut to Vince and the Macho Man at ringside saying that this will be Lex Luger's first appearance since SummerSlam. And Macho gets a little wistful. He says he never would have predicted the single greatest heel turn in the history of professional wrestling in a million zillion years. He's completely 100% befuddled. Befuddled. Great word for the Macho Man. Befuddled.
Who would have predicted?
I know. They tell us that we're going to have Jerry the King Lawler squaring off against Duke the Dumpster Droese, and the Macho Man is betting on Duke because it's time to take the trash out of the WWF. Also, we are informed that tonight there's going to be a special interview with Bob Backlund, who has been snapping, apparently. To contrast the fact that we're going to be highlighting Bob Backlund, Vince hits us with the New Generation catchphrase. And that's going to lead us right into our first match. And oh, it's a doozy. Lex Luger defeats the Executioner by submission in 2 minutes and 34 seconds. I'm going to keep this short, much like the match itself. Lex Luger enters the ring, Vince says that he personifies the red, white, and blue American spirit. The Macho Man says that he's one of the many people that thought Lex Luger had sold out, and he will never doubt Luger again. They say that Luger will never forget the humiliation Tatanka delivered at SummerSlam. Lex Luger is proud of who he is and what kind of competitor he is. Vince says that Todd Pettengill had read a letter from a young Native American girl who was extremely hurt by the actions of her former role model. And apparently, Roddy Piper has also interviewed a Native American father and son who were both extremely hurt by Tatanka's actions. Vince and Macho are both just equally disgusted throughout all of this. He sold out all Native Americans. Macho Man says it's an unbelievable setback for Native Americans all over the world.
All over the world. All over the world.
And don't forget, at the end of that, he said, and they're all about pride.
So, not long after Macho drops these words of wisdom, Luger puts the executioner in the torture rack and the match is over. That's it, folks. The commentary was the best part of this match. My notes here are just reminding me here that this was basically a squash match, so Vince could attempt to put over Luger and hype the feud. I'm curious to hear what you guys think of this. Ryan, why don't you get it started?
I guess just to get it started out, we should recognize that the executioner with agony written down his pant leg is Barry Hardy. So anytime you see executioner agony, that is Barry Hardy in the ring.
Okay.
So that's, so that's something worth mentioning. You covered a lot of the different commentary, as you mentioned, really the only thing worth of note in this entire match. I'll just bring up a few of the things that maybe you missed. The Macho Man says about Lex Luger. One of my favorite lines from him is, he will get to Tatanka. I'm triple sure of it. I'm red, white, and blue sure of it. I thought that was a pretty great line by Macho Man there. Another thing of note, quickly, while they were still doing their entrances, they did a quick shot of a guy named Lou Gianfrido from the WWF Magazine, and that he was ringside. I don't know if he's going to show up any later in the night, but there he was. I mean, we've got a magazine writer at ringside, so that's a big ordeal, right?
It is worthy of note, yeah.
The only other thing that I'd probably like to mention is, as we've talked about before, Vince really loves topical things. And at the very end, when he's congratulating Lex Luger on his extremely huge victory, he also would like to give congratulations to the winner of Miss America, Heather Whitestone. And that she is a tremendous role model for all the little girls all over America.
Yeah. I think this is a missed opportunity for them to have Tatanka actually read that letter from that little girl and then end it with that maniacal laugh.
Yeah. Yeah, that would have been great.
Yeah. This is weird. This is a match that Luger just comes out and just squashes the executioner, but they're talking about the feud with Tatanka, but there's not, like, why didn't DiBiase and Tatanka come out? I'm not real sure, but.
Or at least up on the view screen,
Yeah.
saying something to them. Yeah.
Couple things match related. Dad is there. Louis Gianfrido is there, working hard, writing for the magazine. The torture rack, they called it the Rebel Rack.
Yeah, they've called it the Rebel Rack before, too.
And a couple commentary notes that I have here is Vince saying Lex Luger is just proud of who he is. And Tatanka sold out all of his Native Americans. And Lex Luger is a man for all Native Americans.
Yes.
And for all over the world.
Yes. And then it was the match. Okay. First match of the night. It's over in 2 minutes?
Yeah.
And there's flexing and fireworks after. I don't know. I guess Vince is still trying this thing out with Lex Luger. Who knows? I thought that was very strange for there to be pyro and Lex must flex at the end.
Why don't you like him? Look at his shoulders, for God's sakes.
Would somebody just cheer Lex Luger?
Get their attention with the fireworks. In this match, I remember almost nothing. I watched this Raw yesterday and then rewatched it again today in preparation for recording the podcast. I remember virtually nothing of the wrestling in this match. It was so forgettable. The commentary, on the other hand, yeah, whenever Macho Man says that it's an unbelievable setback for Native Americans all over the world, I had to pause it because I was laughing so hard. I had tears in my eyes and I couldn't see.
The amount of times from the very beginning of this episode and into this match that they try and say that Tatanka's selling out hurt the Native American people is astonishing. They say it so many times that what he did truly hurt the very fabric of the Native American people. I mean,
I think they have to say it. I think they have to say it a million times because both of the talent are so terrible at storytelling themselves that they have to have the commentary. They have to just brutally beat it into our brains.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. It was, like I said, just completely forgettable. And even though they were talking it up this whole time, what I took away from it is, just more fallout from the single greatest heel turn in the history of professional wrestling. Not so much that it was Lex Luger, but, Native Americans all over the world have been affected by this.
I mean, here we are. We were originally talking about this all the way back in our Raw So Far episodes.
Yeah.
We're still talking about it now, so obviously it's important.
The ripples are felt 25 years later. Unbelievable setback. I mean, Trail of Tears is nothing compared to this. So we're gonna get away from that match. Whatever kind of match that really was, just such a crappy squash match. And next up, there is a video montage with a Todd Pettingzoo voiceover talking even more about the single greatest heel turn in the history of professional wrestling. Basically, just rehashing the entire story over again in case you forget or in case you missed it during the entire first segment and first match. They really wanted to drill that into you. And then he goes on to say that next week, the new tag team champs, Shawn Michaels and Diesel, will be in action, and there will be a special edition of King's Court with the British Bulldog as the guest, Davey Boy Smith. I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to seeing the British Bulldog back in action again. I was always a fan of his as a kid, and I'm hoping that it aged well. I do have a question about this, though. What makes this a special edition of King's Court? Does anybody have an answer for that?
They seem to be having them every week at this point, so
that's what I'm saying. Like, there's nothing really special about it.
I guess maybe the fact that Davey Boy Smith is going to be on it because he hasn't really wrestled or been in the WWF for a while now, other than showing up at the pay-per-view.
Yeah, I mean, that's the only thing that I can think of, but I don't know. I was kind of a little put off with the picture of him that they put up for that. He was in his normal Bulldog gear, but he had his hair down instead of in the cornrows. And I was like, what the fuck is that? He looks just kind of mangy. He's the mangy Bulldog now.
Where's his fanny pack?
Yeah. So.
And mange.
Mites. Yeah. Microscopic mites in the skin. So this is going to take us into the next match, and hold on to your butts, everybody. This one's a barn burner. This is the blow-off match. This is Duke the Dumpster Droese defeating Jerry the King Lawler by fucking count out in 8 minutes. 8 minutes and 48 seconds. I know I said it before, but this is more of a commentary-heavy match as opposed to action-heavy match. We've made our feelings on Duke the Dumpster quite clear. So I'm just going to run through it real quick here with you, try to get all 8 minutes and 48 seconds of this match in as painlessly as possible. Lube me up, boys, I'm going in. Lawler comes out first, gets on the mic and says he's only going to say it one more time, but when he walks down the aisle, you peons should kneel and kiss his feet, which inspires Macho to say he's got to be ribbon. I thought that was pretty fun. Lawler says he's been waiting a long time to get his hands on the trash man. He goes over to the corner of the ring. He questions Fink about what it's like to have morning breath 24 hours a day. I thought that was quite clever.
Yeah, it was.
I love Vince's reaction when that happens too. Vince is like, oh.
Well, it was something like, well, how does he know?
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah.
So he goes on to say that the dumpster gave his clothes to Goodwill, but they gave them back. Also quite clever, I thought. And then he finally says that Drosy's a filthy piece of trash, and the trash is going to get taken out tonight by the king. We cut to a commercial, and when we come back, Duke the Dumpster Drozy comes out with his trash can. And I have it noted here, there is a decent amount of crowd noise for him here. I'm not sure if it would really be classified as like a full-blown pop or not, but people are excited that he's showing up. After they get in the match and things get going, they show a close-up of Duke yelling at Lawler. My impression of that was that he looks like speaking in complete sentences is very difficult. Like, his brow was very furrowed, and he was trying very hard to, like, form the words on his lips. I don't want to make any judgments about his intellect, but it looked like talking was hard for Duke. Lawler gets Duke in a headlock and is yelling at the crowd. And as far as the actual wrestling in this match goes, I felt that Lawler was doing a really good job of selling for Duke, even though Duke was just completely pissing away the opportunity. Speaking of topical, Vince talks about the house of Margaret Mitchell, author of the novel Gone with the Wind, burning down to the ground this weekend, and you have to wonder if Lawler will do the same thing to Drozy. Margaret Mitchell, everyone.
What a lead-in.
Because Raw fans are going to be really appreciative of Margaret Mitchell and Gone with the Wind. We do find out that we have Jack Tunney to thank for this match, so fuck you, Jack Tunney.
Emperor Lord Jack Tunney.
Yeah. The fans will not leave the King alone with the Burger King chant. More of that sweet, sweet free advertising for Burger King. After this match, Macho says that Lawler is going to be one of the people begging to go into the biosphere. And Vince says that maybe the only place that will take him, except the local dump, of course, but the biosphere. You guys remember the biosphere back in the day?
Oh, yeah.
They based Biodome off of that shit.
Yeah, I actually went to the biosphere probably around this time, too. Yes.
Really?
Yeah, it was horrible.
Did you see Lawler there?
No, it was horrible. Everything about it was terrible.
Did you run in the Pauly Shore?
No, I did not run into him wheezing the juice.
Or the lessest known, his older brother is extreme.
The Baldwin.
The Baldwin, yes. He's the lessest known of the Baldwins was in that movie.
Well, I have to say that I'm a little jealous that you got to see the original Biodome, back in the day.
Yeah, that's something.
Yeah, just one of those things. So at this point in the match, they're cutting to a commercial. When they come back, Lawler is bringing a foreign object out from his pants. Vince brings up Prince Charles and horses, I think, for some goddamn reason. I couldn't understand what he was saying. Lawler nails Duke with the loaded fist. Vince says Lawler thinks he's the new Julio Cesar Chavez of the WWF, being very topical once again. Macho says he's only a wannabe. In a shocking turn of events, Lawler, after giving Duke a pile driver and not going for the pin, goes out to ringside to Duke's garbage can, saying that he's going to put Duke in it. It's a small garbage can. There's no reason to think that Duke's going to fit in it. He lifts the lid.
Plastic garbage can.
A plastic one, too.
Yeah, it's like the one you'd see at a fair or amusement park.
Well, they needed a little extra room in there because whenever Lawler lifts the lid, Dink has been in there the whole time. Yes, folks, the garbage can was loaded again. Dink sprays Lawler in the eyes with some kind of something, blinding him. I'm assuming it's midget piss. Lawler begins chasing Dink around the outside of the ring while the ref is counting. And Duke wins this match by countout that way. Vince calls this poetic justice. I call it a shit match. Dink comes back out. Oh my God. Dink comes back out to literally bite Lawler in the ass. He literally climbed up and bit him on the ass cheek before running away and making Lawler chase him again. Lawler goes to pick up the trash can, making like he's going to attack Duke with it, and he doesn't know that Doink is right behind him in a Burger King crown. Lawler escapes through the fans while Doink and Dink laugh hysterically in the aisle. Duke picks up Dink and has his arm raised by Doink. Vince says anything can happen in the WWF, including treating a count out as a major victory, apparently. And that's it. That match is over. Joe, please save us from this insanity.
Lawler tried so hard with this.
Yeah.
He was doing a lot of stalling, a lot of psychologically he was good. I don't think the crowd is attached to Duke so much. I think they just hate Lawler that much that they were really into it and screaming. And the people up front, man, they were going apeshit. Like they were not staying in their seats. Like if that happened now, I don't think anybody would be okay. I don't think people up front would be okay with that, especially with, paying that kind of money to be up that close. But yeah, there's definitely no attachment to Duke with these fans. I think they just hate Lawler. And I just get so upset with this Doink, this new Doink. Does he even wrestle? Like, have we even seen him wrestle? He just came out and tapped Jerry on the shoulder and then laughed.
Not on Raw.
Yeah, we have yet to see him even throw a punch, let alone wrestle. Some of the great commentary notes I had here was that when Dink sprayed Lawler, Macho said, "The squirt gave him a squirt." And when Dink bit his ass, Macho said, "Take a bite out of crime. More like take a bite out of slime." And that's pretty much all I took out of this match.
There's not a lot happening in this match. The main thing that I took away from this match is Jerry the King Lawler. He does all he can to try and sell this match.
Yep.
And really the only good moments in this match are from Lawler. When he comes into the ring and he starts bashing the crowd, calling them peons and they should get down and kiss his royal feet, and making fun of the Think for his 24-hour morning breath. All of that stuff is great. And the crowd's just hating every minute of it. Another point, early in the match, Lawler gets knocked to the outside of the ring, and he has some confrontation with a couple kids, and he gives the backhand motion like he's getting ready to smack one of this 7-year-old kid, and everyone's booing him. I mean, it's just classic heel maneuvers here by Lawler, and he does them well. It's really the only good part. Another interesting part, the dumpster lands a classic 10-count punch in the turnbuckle, and Lawler does a Ric Flair style face forward flop into the ring. So that was fun to watch. Just Lawler really hamming up the hill here. There's very few in the wrestling world that are able to be a heel like Jerry the King Lawler. And he's doing all he can to try and get Dumpster over here, but it doesn't matter what you do. You're not going to make Duke the Dumpster Droese a huge fan with the fans. It's just not going to happen. The biggest thing that really came away from this, I don't think we've mentioned yet, this Raw was recorded a full month before it aired. So we're talking before SummerSlam. That kind of plays into why it feels like this feud feels like something very old. And it started over 3 months ago at this point. It kind of felt like maybe it was resolved just because we haven't talked about it for so long. But now here we are kind of bringing up the conclusion of it. And the way it ends, it feels like we're just trying to wrap up this bullshit with Duke the Dumpster Droese so that we can make the segue into the King's feud with Doink and Dink. And that's really all that's happening here, is moving us over to that feud.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with both of you guys on just about everything here. Lawler was great, or at least as good as he could be, considering what he had to work with in there. The commentary was fantastic. Literal trash, yes. I mean, he lives in a goddamn dumpster. Yeah, that's about it. I was really, really pissed off that we ended this feud with a count out and that we are treating this as a major victory. I mean, Doink raises Duke's hand in the aisle at the end of this like it fucking mattered. Like this wasn't a disgrace of a match.
This is all just build up for the Doink versus Lawler feud is all it is.
I know, but still.
Duke is just kind of the transition.
But we've spent 3 months trying to build up to this Duke the Dunkster feud, and we're just trying to brush it off as quick as possible now.
Yeah, and I mean, I at least give him a pinfall, a clean win. That's it. I'm not saying that I would have asked for a better match because that would just be impossible, but at least give him the clean win. And
he's not a clean guy.
The count out felt really cheap.
Yeah, that's exactly it. The count out is just such a piss poor way to end this feud. I don't know. I'll leave it at that. I was not happy with this match in any way, shape, or form. So after this match, we have, and I wanted to ask you guys about this, we have a weird segment advertising the zone, the action zone. Do either of you guys know what that was about? Because I did not know.
Yes, they had a Sunday morning show that was called the All-American Show, and it's going through a name change. And I have it noted as just called the Zone, but they called it the Action Zone, and that's all I know about it.
Okay.
The only thing I really have noted here was how clearly they were trying to rip off the Unsolved Mysteries music because it was getting close to Halloween and they were playing the
Yeah, I guess we remember, you guys probably remember from watching all the 93 stuff that Mania, WWF Mania is probably, I don't know if it's off the air now.
Oh, okay.
But they never plugged that anymore. So this may have been.
Yeah, I was just a little confused because, again, they were talking about it like we ought to know what it is, and I didn't. So, all right, moving along to the next match. And I was excited about this one. One of my favorites. The Heavenly Bodies, the Doctor of Desire, Tom Pritchard, and Gigolo Jimmy Del Rey defeat Mike Bell and Steve King by pinfall in 3 minutes even. Again, not a whole lot going on in the ring here. This was mostly a match of domination. We start off with them coming down to the ring, and Gigolo Jimmy Del Rey must have recovered from his broad plowing injury, that broken pelvis that he had, because he's back in the ring and doing his pelvic thrusts like he likes to do. Once they're in the ring, we're going to cut to a commercial again real quick. This has Razor for Ico Pro and Macho for Slim Jims again. And then they say that they apologize because the match started during that commercial break. When we come back, the Heavenly Bodies are in charge of Steve King in the ring. And this is it. This is all we're going to see is the Heavenly Bodies beating the shit out of Steve King for 3 minutes. At one point, Gigolo Jimmy Del Rey does a little Cactus Jack bang bang action, like what you think of bang bang. Whenever you think of Cactus Jack, he does that. At first, I assumed that was innuendo for banging whores, but Vince suggests, however, that this is meant to antagonize the Smoking Guns, and this is the first I'm learning of it. Apparently, a feud between the Heavenly Bodies and the Smoking Guns has been brewing ever since the Smoking Guns pulled the wings off of the Heavenly Bodies' ring entrance gear, and the Heavenly Bodies then retaliated by crushing the Smoking Guns' hats. Yeah, oh no is what I thought too. Fucking dicks, taking their wings. Anyway, throughout this match, the whole match, Steve King is selling very well. He's doing a very good job of enhancing this match. Vince notes the absence of Jim Cornette here, saying that he's allegedly in Toronto, Canada, attempting to insert some sort of special provision into the Heart Attack tour.
Not a banana.
Which is funny because they mention this later. They mention Jim Cornette not being there later for a different reason. So they definitely fucked that up.
Yeah, Vince roars devastating maneuver as Gigolo Jimmy Del Rey gives Steve King one hell of a clothesline, sells the shit out of it. The Doctor of Desire puts a gut-wrench powerbomb on Steve King, makes it look effortless. He tags to Del Rey, who hits the moonsault, gets the 3 count, and in case you forgot, Mike Bell was the other guy in this match, the other Steve King's partner. Mike Bell never once sets foot in the ring in all of this 3 minutes. I liked it. Ryan, what'd you think?
To like it is kind of tough. I mean, it's such a short squash match here.
Yeah.
But I will give you the Heavenly Bodies, especially Del Rey, looks really good in here. I hate to say this, but the longer it goes on, I'm starting to get in your camp a little bit. I don't like their gimmick, but the Heavenly Bodies, they're good wrestlers.
They are.
And the Gigolo Del Rey, he really does some really nice look moves here. Steve King as the jobber does a really good job of selling these moves. And his only job in here is to basically be a punching bag for the 2 Heavenly Bodies as they just tag each other in and out and they just beat on him. I've mentioned in other podcasts how poor of an enhancement talent Mike Bell is. And it appears the WWF agrees with me because they don't even allow him to enter this match. Yes, he's part of this tag team, but Steve King's the only person that shows up. He gets manhandled by the Heavenly Bodies. He gets slammed and pinned, and we're on to next week. It was a good match. It was a good squash match for the Heavenly Bodies just to kind of establish that they're still a force to be reckoned with in the tag team world. But as far as matches go, there's not a real lot going on here.
Yeah, I only have 2 things noted on this match. Number 1, I think Mike Bell did an excellent job as an enhancement talent in this match. And 2, Jimmy Del Rey should have been promoted as the ugliest gigolo in the world.
Yeah, he's hideous.
Yeah, those are my only notes.
Yeah, you've mentioned that a few times about old Gigolo Jimmy.
Yeah, I just can't get over it.
He's an ugly man to be a gigolo. That's,
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I don't know what women like, so maybe he's got something going on. He does that hip action pretty well.
It's established on episode 7. Bartlett finds Gigolo Del Rey attractive.
No.
And likes his hip gyrating.
He loves his hip motions.
All I'm saying is that if he's a gigolo and he's that pug fugly, he's got to be doing something right. And maybe that's where his success is.
Speaking of having a secret love for wrestlers, how about this next
oh my gosh.
This next piece here?
What a segue.
Thank Friar Ferguson. We've got another Catholic Church commercial. So this commercial, if you'll recall from our last episode of Wrasslin Raw, there was a young man in a confessional booth confessing to a priest. And this time around, it is a gorgeous young woman that has entered the confessional in this Catholic church. She says she's tormented because 2 months ago, she started watching the new WWF generation with her husband. And suddenly, she's felt this instant attraction to Razor Ramon, Shawn Michaels, and Bret Hart. Thoughts of these men consume her most intimate moments, and she feels so unfaithful. Please forgive me. Please forgive me. And then that pastor, he says, we can work something out. And she's relieved. And we get the WWF New Generation graphic up and the tagline to put your faith in us. I mean, I don't know if I'm just reading too much into it, but was that pastor or priest being a pervert with the whole "we can work something out" thing? Was that an innuendo?
No, not a priest being a pervert. That's unheard of.
Was this the same woman we talked about? That one commercial that they had where the woman was in the bed with her husband and he's watching Raw,
No.
and she's.
I don't believe so. No.
Is this the same woman? Okay.
No.
Well, they're both wonderful.
Yes.
Wonderful looking women.
Equally hot, but not the same.
And I don't know if you were going to mention this in a second, but I really loved right when they came back from the commercial, Macho Man, what he says about it. He says that, oh, that lady wasn't thinking about Bob Backlund. She should come clean. She was thinking about the madness. But he forgives her. She just needs to do 3 hell machos and 4 hell mans.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's always great comments right after those commercials. Those Friar Ferguson commercials.
Thank Friar Ferguson for that commercial. So whenever we come back from this commercial break, we're going into my favorite part of this episode of Raw. I'll save my comments for the end of it, but I liked it. We're just going to go straight into it here. Vince is going to be interviewing Bob Backlund in ring. The crowd is booing Backlund once he comes down to the ring, and Vince starts talking to him and starts highlighting Backlund's origins, saying that, you know, he's a former collegiate NCAA champion as well as a former WWF champion. In the amateur ranks, Backlund typified what sportsmanship was all about. The Macho Man mutters, "has been," at this point. The crowd is starting to pick that up as well. Vince says that in a recent match, many people feel that Bret Hart has proved his superiority to Bob Backlund. They're going to go back and think back to several years ago when Backlund decided to make a return to the WWF. And Backlund says that he decided to set a goal to once again be the WWF champion. And he would bring with him those same values that he had when he was WWF champion before, as a consummate sportsman. Vince said that Backlund was that consummate sportsman up until the match with Bret Hart, where Bret proved his superiority to Backlund. Vince says, "You snapped, Bob Backlund, plain and simple." This is where Vince starts getting indignant, just really kind of down-talking him. Vince says, "What's in your head?" chastising Bob Backlund like a parent chastising a child. And this is where the fun starts. Backlund gets on the mic. Backlund says he celebrated his 16th anniversary of being the champion last year, and now he's going for 18. And as he says this, his face kind of twitches a little bit, like he knows he just fucked up. He knows he just like misspoke, and that doesn't make sense. The Macho Man does a really good job of covering for it, saying that he's so messed up he can't even count. Backlund says that he's cognizant of everything he's doing, and that before the end of that match, he had defeated Bret the Hitman Hart 1, 2, 3. And as far as standards go, he starts yelling at this point. As far as standards go, his standards are higher than they ever have been in his life. His standards are too high for the plebeians in this world, and we can't live up to his standards, except he pronounces plebeians Publians. He will fight for those standards. Society today is corrupt. Society has teachers that help kids cheat on tests and principals that drive around dressed like women. Do you think he wants to be a member of this society? He's appalled. He's disgraced to think that he used to love the people, but they changed. They destroyed the world around them. And if we could live up to his standards, we would have a utopia. Backlund says he put the chicken wing on Bret Hart for one reason, because when he did it, he had the opportunity to put it on each and every one of us people. Publians, he's not one of you anymore. He walks tall. He doesn't have to cheat. And he hopes that each and every one of us feels the pain of the greatest hold in professional wrestling, the chicken wing. When he came back, he didn't use the chicken wing because he wanted to make the people happy. But these people can drag anybody down. They are not successful. They are manipulators. They manipulate themselves. The chicken wing is the greatest hold in professional wrestling, and nobody, including the man with the belt, can get out of it. At this point, the crowd starts really getting into chanting "has been" at him. Backlund says he runs more miles in a day than they do in a lifetime. And then he shouts, "You suffer from dyslexia. 50% of the people in America can't read. That's the kind of educational system we have."
That was so random.
Yes. Yes, it was. I was taken aback for a minute.
He just shouted. Yeah, he just shouted.
You suffer from dyslexia. Vince wants to take exception to the statement that there is no escape from the crossface chicken wing because Bob Backlund himself at one time said for every move there is a counter and for every move there is an escape. Backlund says there was no way to escape the chicken wing. Backlund says, "Ladies and gentlemen," and I use that term loosely, If there's anybody that can walk away or get out of that chicken wing once he gets them pinioned to the mat, he'll retire from professional wrestling for good. Vince says that's a pretty bold statement, and the Macho Man is at ringside encouraging Vince to take the challenge. But lo and behold, Lou Gianfrido, a man that looks like he may be smaller than Harvey Whippleman. This man was tiny. Lou Gianfrido, that writes for WWF Magazine that we mentioned earlier, he gets in the ring, and he is literally half the size of Bob Backlund here. They double check with everybody, make sure everything's cool. Lou says he wants to go for it. Bob says, are you sure he wants to go for it? Yep. Lou Gianfrido says he's ready for it. Vince gives him an out one last time. He says, are you sure you don't want to challenge a wrestler from the back to do this? And Bob says, when he says something, he's not going to be fallacious with these people. He's not the president of the United States. He doesn't lie. He doesn't cheat. And if he says that he's going to do it, like it or not, he's going to tell the truth. Backlund locks in the chicken wing on Lou, who struggles a little bit and says, easy, Bob. Easy, Bob. At this point, Bob starts flinging Lou Gianfrido around like a rag doll, just completely jerking this poor son of a bitch around the ring. And then he starts shouting, fight it! Fight it! At this point, Vince is screaming that Lou works for the magazine. He's not even a wrestler. Leave him alone. Bob Backlund is full-blown snapping, takes Lou down to the mat, wraps his leg around him. 4 referees, the Macho Man and Vince McMahon himself, try to pull Backlund off of Lou. They finally get him off. Everybody gets Lou out of the ring, and Backlund is left in there with the microphone. He is quite pleased with himself. He says, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Mr. Backlund, and nobody can get out of the chicken wing. Did you feel it? Did you feel it? That's what discipline is all about, ladies and gentlemen. And then we cut to a commercial. Ryan, thoughts, please.
Well, you gave a pretty good recap of what was said during that. I know you're a huge Bob Backlund fan and you love everything about him. So you were sucking everything up with a spoon about this interview. And so I guess there's really not a ton more to cover outside of the couple things that I really loved that he said. My favorite line from Bob Backlund over the night, mostly because it reminded me of something my dad would say, was, ladies and gentlemen, and I use that term loosely. It's just such a dad saying to say something like that.
I can totally hear old Rock saying it.
And Lou Gianfrido, I have to give props to him. All 4'10", 90 pounds of that glorious mini mullet that comes into the ring. And the way he's just pleading with Bob. Bob, hey, Bob, what are you doing? When he starts really, really cranking on the chicken.
Come on, he's not even a wrestler.
And just the way he flails about the ring when it's applied to him was hilarious. I mean, I was laughing out loud over the way Lou was flipping around during the chicken wing. So I loved that part.
My favorite part of this is the end when he's staring at the hands.
Yes.
Because this was something that he would do and somebody in the crowd yells, howdy doody. And apparently that is a name that was given to him by the Grand Wizard, who was a former manager in the WWF. So this whole segment, it got me, I went down a couple wormholes here. I did some research on Bob Backlund. I wanted to know like what his history was, because obviously his original run as champion was before we were even born.
Yeah.
So I did a little research there. I did a little research on WWF the Magazine as well. If you guys want to hear, I can give you a short little recap on what I found here.
Yeah, hit me.
So WWF the Magazine was originally known as WWF Victory Magazine. It debuted in 1983. I didn't know it was around that long. The third issue was issued in April of 1984 and had Hulk Hogan on the cover. And it was a bi-monthly magazine until June of 1987, where it became monthly. And WWF created a second magazine in 1996 known as Raw Magazine. You guys probably remember that.
Yes.
So they had 2 magazines going at the same time in 1996, during their heyday there with the Attitude Era. And it ceased production in July of 2014 because news media print is not doing so well these days, you know.
Which magazine ceased
Both.
in 20? They were both going up until 2014.
Well, I'm not sure if Raw magazine was going until 2014, but WWE, I think what happened was when they changed the name to WWE in 2002, I think they just went to one magazine called WWE Magazine.
Okay.
Yeah. So Bob Backlund, okay, real quick, he won a Division II NCAA championship in 1971 at North Dakota State University. In 1976, he joined the Worldwide Wrestling Federation, which was operated by Vince's dad, Vincent J. McMahon, managed by the Golden Boy Arnold Scaland. And he had a feud with superstar Billy Graham, and he beat him in 1978 for the heavyweight championship. So in 1978, Bob Backlund became the champion. He held that title until 1983.
Jeez.
And in 1983, he changed his image, and fans were becoming weary of Backlund. He cut his mop of hair that he had into a crew cut, and he lost muscle mass and definition and began wearing a wrestling singlet. And that's what inspired the Grand Wizard to refer to him as Howdy Doody. And during that time, he's still the champion, but Vincent K. McMahon bought the company from his dad in 1983 and wanted to put the belt on Hogan. So in old school wrestling style, he wanted Backlund to turn heel and then put the title on Hogan, but Backlund refused to turn heel. So they needed a transitional champion to get the belt on Hogan, which was the Iron Sheik. So Backlund sustained a kayfabe arm injury from the Iron Sheik, and he lost the title to the Iron Sheik when Bob Backlund's manager, Arnold Scaland, threw in the towel while Backlund was locked in the camel clutch. So that is very important for what's going to happen in the near future. And Bob Backlund continued to work in the WWF until about 1984, and then he left and returned in 92. So lost to the Sheik because his manager threw in the towel. That was the angle they used. And then eventually Hogan beat the Iron Sheik and became the champ in 1983. So yeah, that's what I found. I was interested to know more about Bob Backlund just because we didn't know anything about him. And that's what I found out.
Yeah, thank you for that, Joe. That's a whole bunch of information that I didn't know either. So, like I said before, I loved this entire interview segment, and I know you guys like to bust my balls on that kind of thing, but this is one of the biggest things that I remember from my childhood. The last time we talked about Bob Backlund and snapping, I mentioned it. I just remember back in the day, me and my cousin Beefaroni putting the chicken wing on each other, trying to emulate this guy and all of the snapping. And this was like, watching this interview was just like a blast from the past, man. It was so great to watch this. At first, the first couple times I had seen Bob Backlund since we've started rewatching Raw, I really haven't been impressed because it really hasn't been all that great. It's just been usual goofy Bob Backlund, going to the ring with that crazy weird walk that he does. But this was the Bob Backlund that I liked. And he got so into this. They say that the best gimmicks are the ones that just kind of take your normal personality and amplify it, right? Stone Cold is really like Stone Cold. It's just he's not quite as over the top as Stone Cold is,
The volume turned up, yeah.
Yeah, volume turned up. So I can't help but wonder if this is actually the real Bob Backlund just with the volume turned up. Is he this much of a condescending fucking prick in his own head? Because it kind of seems like it.
All those botches he was making, like on his speeches and stuff, like that was on purpose, apparently. Like he was doing that on purpose as part of the crazy gimmick.
Yeah.
And it was so good.
Yeah, that's what, see, at first I wasn't quite sure because the early mistake that he makes with, celebrating his 16th anniversary and now he's going for 18 and he kind of makes that face, I call it like a glitch face. Like you just kind of make a motion with your mouth and your eyes kind of like twitch for a second, like, you just fucked up, you glitched. After that, I was like, oh, okay, I see what's going on here. Like, he's going for some insanity, but this is some really well-educated insanity. At one point, the Macho Man says that he needs a dictionary to follow Bob Backlund whenever he's up there talking. He uses words like plebeians, even though he mispronounces it as publians. What else? Fallacious. Just all of these different terms that he's using, screaming that you suffer from dyslexia. And all of this was done with like this did not come across as some guy doing a gimmick in a promo. This came across to me as some fucking whack job, like seriously just out in the middle of a group of people yelling like a street preacher or some crazy shit like that. For me personally, at least, he sold the hell out of all of this. I loved every second of it. I loved watching it. I loved the end of it whenever he puts the chicken wing on poor little Lou and started just tossing him around, and just it took me aback at first, because this is all stuff that I had forgotten, and it's coming back to me. And him doing this chicken wing challenge kind of stuff. Like at first I was like, oh yeah, that's right. He puts it on the guy and like he makes the guy tap out. But I had completely forgotten how much he ragdolls this poor son of a bitch all over the place. And then whenever he just starts screaming, fight it at poor little Lou, that's when I was utterly and completely sold. I very much look forward to more Bob Backlund in the future. Hopefully it keeps up like this.
I have to admit that I don't care about Bob Backlund at all. I mean, I'm sorry. I'm sorry to have to admit it. I really loved Lou getting flailed around the ring there. But I remember back when I was young too, when Bob Backlund came on, I was just like, oh God, get this old guy off the television.
Howdy doody.
Yeah. Yeah. It just does nothing for me. I have to admit.
Maybe that's because you're a publian.
I think it's like, I think it's okay now. I don't love it. I don't love it. The fact that I know what's going to happen with it, that makes me not love it.
There were certain points about that promo that I thought were really great, but I thought overall it was just way too long.
Yeah. And did you notice too when Vince went after him, the crowd exploded.
Oh yeah. Yep.
Like when Vince went, and then when Macho Man came in, they went crazy. So it was interesting to see Vince in kind of a babyface role there.
Yeah, the whole time Vince's attitude with him, like he was a parent scolding an unruly teenager or something. It was really kind of weird from Vince's point of view in this.
Yeah, Vince is just overselling.
We really should move on.
Yeah. As long as we can just all agree real quick that this was fucking amazing and made the whole night.
It was okay.
It was amazing. All right, so moving on. Thurman Sparky Plug, or Bob Sparkplug Holly, whichever you want to believe, defeating Richie Rich by pinfall in 1 minute and 58 seconds. I don't know if you guys noticed, the ring announcer announces him as Thurman Sparky Plug, but the chyron says Bob Sparkplug Holly. In commentary, Vince refers to him as Bob Sparkplug Holly. My friends call me Sparky.
Yeah, that was on one of my Meltzer notes from the Observer. I guess this official name change to Bob Sparkplug Holly, and he thinks that it was for some sort of legal reason.
STP.
That they couldn't use Thurman Sparky Plug or whatever. I don't know. Yeah, I'm not sure.
This is another one that's going to be short, not just because it's 1 minute and 58, but from the first moves, Richie Rich is not great at all. Sparky Plug looks to be getting visibly agitated with Richie Rich within the first 2 or 3 exchanges. Vince is mainly talking about the incident with Backlund throughout this entire match. Between juggling the attention paid to what Vince is saying and trying to keep up with what's going on in the ring, it really looked like it was getting to be a pretty stiff match. It looked like some of those moves were landing pretty solidly. Bob Holly, we all know, has a legendary temper and likes to get a little stiff with people that he thinks is fucking him around. And I don't know for a fact, but that's kind of what it seemed like to me. Bob Holly signals for a move, goes up to the top rope. It winds up being a crossbody splash and then the 3 count for the win. After the match, Vince apologizes to Bob Holly, saying that this is from ringside while Bob Holly is still in the ring celebrating his victory. He doesn't say this face to face, but he apologizes to Bob Holly, saying that Bob Backlund's actions have affected everybody. And then we cut to a commercial. Joe, did you have thoughts on this match?
I don't, other than Sparky's music being so terrible and the fact that they just talked about Bob Backlund the entire match. I was completely tuned out. I didn't really make notes of anything within the match at all. Ryan, do you think Bob Holly is greater than Bob Backlund?
I don't know about that one. Hardcore Holly, I did enjoy Hardcore Holly, so maybe. Yeah, this match, not much going on at all. And I think Vince and Macho even bring it up. Vince apologizes for not talking about the match. They just can't believe what they saw with Bob Backlund. So that's all they're talking about. Maybe if they were paying attention to this match a little bit, they would realize that Richie Rich kind of looks like a small, less muscular, low-rent version of Ludwig Borga, which isn't a compliment. At all. But Richie Rich, of course, goes out there, gets hammered, and is pinned for the 1, 2, 3 really quick. It's not really much of a match at all, and there's not anything to really talk about here.
Yeah, agreed on all points. What else is there to say? I do like Bob Holly. I liked him back then. I mean, the whole gimmick is stupid. I never liked the whole Sparky Plug thing, but I do like his in-ring work, even though, like I said, the gimmick is stupid. Yes, Joe, the music was horrible.
Do you think this is almost like Bruce and Vince and all those guys who created this gimmick? Do you think it's almost like a slap in the face to their fans? Because they probably thought like, oh, all these white trash hillbillies, they're going to love this NASCAR guy. And they didn't. I
don't know if you've listened to the Bob Holly episode of Something to Wrestle with Bruce Pritchard. They briefly talk about this. They talk more about his time as Hardcore Holly, but they briefly mention this as a cross-marketing ploy. They were trying to get legit NASCAR sponsorship. They wanted a guy because Bob Holly actually could drive a race car. He did do that. He maintained a race car and was able to compete as a racer. But really what they were going for was cross-promotional endorsement with NASCAR. Somebody that they could, put out on a NASCAR track and actually have them be somewhat of a legitimate competitor. Maybe not winning, but, somebody that'll show up on both things. So that's all. It failed miserably. So we're going to go into our final match here. It's Yokozuna.
Double wide! Double deep!
Yokozuna defeating Phil Apollo by pinfall in 2 minutes and 42 seconds. And Phil Apollo is our jobber of the week. Take it, Ryan.
Yes, Phil Apollo is our jobber of the week. I picked him this week mainly because he has to sit in there and suffer the girth, the massive girth of Yokozuna doing the bonsai drop onto him. Not to mention Phil Apollo is a good in-ring worker. So to start this off, Phil Apollo's real name is Phil Panthos. He was born in Massachusetts. Other than the ring name Phil Apollo, he used the names the American Playboy, Apollo the Greek, the Playboy, and Vince Apollo. Phil made his professional wrestling debut in 1986 after training under the wrestling legend Killer Kowalski. He began his career in his native Boston, Mass. For an independent promotion named International Championship Wrestling, or ICW. In 1987, Phil would defeat Joseph Celluloid to win the ICW Heavyweight Championship belt. A year later, Phil would vacate the belt, moving to Texas and begin working for World Class Championship Wrestling, or WCCW, where he joined Gary Hart's New Age Management stable. After a short stint with the WCCW, Phil would return to the ICW and join Eric Sabraka to form the tag team known as the Dynamic Duo. As the Dynamic Duo, they would defeat SNS Express for the tag team belts in 1989. They would then hold the belts for 118 days before losing them in a rematch to the SNS Express. After that, in the early 90s, Phil would join the WWF as mainly an enhancement talent. His most notable match being a loss to Adam Bomb with manager Johnny Polo during his debut on Monday Night Raw in 1993. Finally, Phil Pantos will retire from wrestling in 1995. Sometimes with these jobbers, there's not a ton of information out there, like I didn't have his birth date. No matter how much I searched, I could not find what this guy's birth date was.
Jeez.
So yeah, sometimes some of these jobbers, the information about them is very, very sparse that's out there. So I apologize for not having his birthday.
Fired.
I wonder if he's related to the shitty Doink the Clown.
Ray Apollo.
Ray Apollo, yeah.
Yeah, I wondered that too whenever I saw who this was and whenever you said who your jobber was going to be. I'm sure if he was actually related, that would have come up in the search. That would be something that would be kind of hard to hide.
I'm sure it would have been mentioned somewhere, yeah.
One thing I noticed is he must have been well respected by Yoko because Yoko did not put his full weight on him on the bonsai.
It seemed like before he made it to the WWF, in the independent circuit, he was a pretty respected name, yeah.
Well, thank you for that, Ryan. Pleasure as always with the Jobber of the Week. That's going to get us into our match here. Again, folks, this was 2 minutes and 42 seconds. Not a whole lot going on here. Yokozuna comes out to the ring. Vince makes the comment about how Yoko has not been on Raw for quite some time. Macho says the last time we saw Yoko was about 30 pounds ago, which is probably completely accurate.
Maybe an underestimate.
Yeah. One of the big things that I noticed here was that Yoko does not have Fuji, Cornette, or the Geisha girls with him anymore. He's just hauling his big ass down to the ring by himself. He's looking quite large. He's already broken out in a sweat walking to the ring. We all know that this is going to be a squash match, but Yoko is still horrible here, in my opinion. The lackluster in-ring work gives Macho Man a chance to pitch USA's movie this week, The Haunting of Seacliff Inn, with Ali Sheedy. It didn't really sound all that interesting. As Macho is saying that as Macho is saying that about The Haunting of Seacliff Inn, Yoko is dragging Apollo into position for the Banzai drop. He lays it in and gets the 1, 2, 3. Vince advertises that there's going to be a Pallbearer lookalike contest as part of the Heart Attack tour, I think.
They will be having a heart attack if they look like Pallbearer.
As Yoko is making his gesture of benediction to his victim, the Undertaker's gong sounds. Yoko starts to freak out. He goes and flops out of the ring and then hurries out through the entryway. And we're going to cut to a commercial there. Joe, what'd you think of the match?
The match itself, like you said, was a squash. Pretty good work by Yoko. Again, I'm a big fan of this Yoko Undertaker angle. It's his best work. It really is.
It is.
And if you notice, Vince said that Yoko is by himself because his cronies are afraid of the Undertaker, even though he said Jim Cornette was doing something in Toronto earlier in the show, which is what I referred to earlier. They also talked about a 40-foot inflatable Undertaker that they have at house shows. I kind of wish they would have showed that. It would have been interesting to have seen that. But yeah, other than that, not much to note for me.
Outside of picking Apollo as the Jobber of the Week, as I said, it was kind of a sympathy because of him having to get this punishment by Yokozuna. But there really is not much happening here except for him taking a beating by the big man. It's just a hard shoulder, a couple tosses, some punches into the turnbuckle, and then bonsai drop, and it's the end of the night for Apollo here. I enjoyed seeing Yokozuna's terrified face as the Undertaker's gong comes on. That's always hilarious to see. But outside of the match itself, there's not much to talk about, like a lot of these Raw matches so far tonight. It's just kind of it's a clear jobber match, and the only thing about it is the Macho Man and Vince setting up and talking about his feud with the Undertaker and the upcoming casket match yet again. The match itself is a throwaway.
Yeah, I'm with you, both of you guys, on this one. It fulfilled its purpose. It was a squash match. It reminded us about the feud. It was a hell of a lot better way to end a Raw than that damn Bushwhackers match last week. I'll tell you that for sure. But yeah, that's about it. Ali Sheedy, Haunting of Seacliff Inn. So once we come back from commercial, there's the show ending. Come back to Vince and Macho at the announce table. Macho says, "What is this? Monday Night Raw or Tales from the Crypt?" Next week, we're going to have Shawn Michaels and Diesel in action. The British Bulldog will be at King's Court. The traitor Tatanka will be in action. And there will be an update on Lou Gianfrido's condition. Vince and Macho both say, "Yes, I am," to the question of whether they'll be here next week. And they hope everybody else will be here too. See you next week. And we are out.
Of course, we know the Macho Man will be along for much, much longer.
Yeah.
And they both yelled Monday Night Raw together to close out the show.
Very wholesome.
Like a live from New York type of thing. Yeah.
So, that's it for this episode of Monday Night Raw. Let's get into some highlights and lowlights. Joe, do you want to go first?
I think the highlight for me was the guy screaming "Howdy Doody" from the crowd, because he looks like Howdy Doody, and he's awful and should not have been given championship matches in 1994. And the low light for me was I don't know, the fact that there weren't, like, Duke the Dumpster and Jerry Lawler was kind of our main event on this this show. The other low light I noted was Luger having that weird jobber match with nothing with Tatanka. I think that was just a missed opportunity.
Yeah.
For me, my highlight is going to have to be poor 4'10", 90-pound Louis Gianfrido. I said that I don't care much about Bob Backlund, but I really loved Lou here in the crossface chicken wing. The way that he flipped around and was pleading to Bob, I was laughing out loud on that. So that is my highlight. Way to go, Lou. Low light is the entire match of Sparky Plug versus Richie Rich. It was just such a garbage match.
Yeah.
It's so worthless that even the announcers didn't pay attention to it the entire time. I mean, if the announcers can't pay attention to it, how's the audience supposed to? That's really all I have for this week.
I wondered, because, I think, Joe, you mentioned this earlier before about how the Backlund interview went on kind of long. I wonder if it went on too long, and that's what caused the Sparky Plug match to be as short as it was and as uneventful as it was.
That's an interesting theory.
Yeah, maybe they just maybe that was supposed to be, it was never going to be a good match, but maybe it was supposed to be a longer, somewhat better match, but because they went over on the Backlund segment, As far as highlights and lowlights go, my lowlight for the night was the ending of the Duke the Dumpster, Jerry the King Lawler match. Duke winning by count out is just absolute bullshit. I think it was just don't get me wrong. Nobody was expecting, a match of the year candidate out of this, but to just kind of to give us the count out as the ending of this feud just kind of like felt like Vince, giving a kid a pat on the head and saying like, go bother somebody else, kid. You know what I mean? Like it just, it was very, very frustrating. It was not a satisfactory resolution to anything. My highlight was, and I'm sure you all know, the entire Bob Backlund segment. I loved it. All of it.
The one that went on too long.
Yep. I don't even care. Don't even care. I loved it. All of it. It was great. I won't beat that to death. I've already said why. That's going to be it for me. So, Joe, do you have some contemporary wrestling news on and around September 19th, 1994?
I do not really. I gave the background on the magazine and Bob Backlund, but just a couple things. Meltzer's really going on and on about how shitty the ratings are right now during this time, probably because Howdy Doody is getting a championship run. The only other thing noted was that Razor Ramon said he wants to take a hiatus in January to spend more time with his family. So we may see him go away soon. So I guess we'll find out. But that's all I have.
All right. That's it, folks. We're done with this one. I want to thank you again for joining us. And if you like what we're doing here and want to connect with us, you can look us up on Facebook. Follow us on Instagram and Twitter under the handle @Wrasslin Raw. That's @WRASSLINRAW, all one word. Also, don't forget to click subscribe to get every episode of Wrasslin Raw popping up in your podcast feed. Let us know what you think. Hit us with a 5-star review or 4 3/4 if you're Dave Meltzer, wherever you download your podcasts. Next week on Wrasslin Raw, we're going to get into the Raw that aired on September 26th, 1994, with matches featuring Rich Myers and the 1-2-3 Kid, among others. So, for Joe and Ryan, I'm Jason, and this has been Wrasslin Raw.